Hi, everybody. Welcome to my live stream on Sunday, Easter Day. So, happy Easter. A good time for rebirth out of the ashes of the old. So, it's a good day to do a live stream when we're talking about how to reinvent reality. I titled this particular one, Managing the Moment. And in the overall view of what I'm trying to accomplish here, which is basically the concept I touched on last time, the concept of Lindisfarne 3, where it's sort of like the 100th monkey syndrome, when a critical number of the monkeys on a little island know how to wash their potatoes, then all monkeys on all islands instantly know how to wash their potatoes. It's a preponderance of consciousness weaving together that causes a shift at a quantum level and shifts what the next moment is going to be. So in order to kind of really understand that concept, we're going to kind of go over some of the deep understanding and information that has to do with the quantum level that's coming up in science recently. We might as well go there. It's Sunday. And it's Easter. So let's dive into that. In the first case, I want to try to use sound and brainwave entrainment to link everybody's brainwaves exactly together in the same place and synchronize all of our consciousness streams together. When you can do that, you can open up doorways to higher levels of information and influence that no one person has access to. So it's through the power of being together, of aligning together, that we have the possibility of changing where the future goes. Now is what exists, and the future is an instant from now, but it hasn't happened yet. So to understand what quantum physicists are currently understanding about the nature of reality, and it's pretty astounding. About a year and a half ago, the international scientific community held a press conference in which they announced a couple of astounding kind of new understandings about the nature of reality. Number one, consciousness is a requirement for reality to exist. That's pretty astounding, because the laws that govern the universe as we know it now, as we experience it, the Newtonian laws of the universe, where gravity makes the apple fall down on your head and time flows forward and things appear to be solid, and the rules of physics seem to hold true. That all breaks down at a quantum level. And where you hit the wall, where the laws that are apparent in this universe and the laws that govern this universe under the hood, so to speak, at a quantum level, that wall is at the periodic table. The periodic table represents all the atoms that make up everything. And the atom represents the smallest particle of matter that still retains all of its properties. So you can have an atom of gold. That means it's the smallest particle of gold that you could possibly have, because just below that, all you've got is sort of letters in the alphabet: protons, electrons, and neutrons. And we know that when we split those apart, they're made of smaller particles, quarks and charms and hadrons and leptons, and we break all these particles together apart, and we've got smaller particles and smaller particles. Kind of discussed this last time. At the bottom, you've got nothing solid at all. It's energy vibration in a standing wave. And a standing wave is something that is vibrating that looks solid because its rate of vibration makes it look like something. For instance, the sand that forms patterns on a metal plate that's vibrating with sound. And it forms lines, and the lines look solid, but they're not. When you look closely, it's just dancing sand particles. So at a quantum level, that's kind of what it's like at the deepest level, where we have something in a state of resonance, something in a state of vibration that's forming a pattern that looks like a hadron or lepton or a Z particle or a quark or a charm. When you zoom back far enough, it looks solid, but you zoom in closer, you realize it's just energy vibration in a standing wave, which means that what I am, my body, is nothing more than an almost infinite number of interplaying standing waves all stacked together and woven together. And how they're stacked together is the same laws that govern music theory. It's mathematical relationships between crests of waves, of standing waves, that are linked together in harmonies, in what we look upon in music as music theory. Harmonics, overtones, octaves. When we have those relationships between things, they hold together. And when we hear it as music, it sounds like a harmony. It sounds like a chord. That's why chords sound pleasing to our ear. And disharmonic discords don't sound pleasing because they don't obey the laws of nature that follow paths of least resistance to form these harmonic patterns that make standing waves and nest them together in mathematical ways that seem pleasing, that form things that look solid like you and me. But in reality, it's just dancing sand particles on a plate. So when we talk about the quantum field like this, the premier approach to explaining that is a scientist named Schrödinger. And Schrödinger, when he discovered what he discovered about the root nature of reality at a quantum level, tried to explain it, but you can only explain it really to another mathematician because it's just equations on a board. So in order to try to explain it to friends or his spouse or anyone else, a layperson, that was the creation of the first thought experiment, which really means a allegorical, metaphorical story. And he created the most famous thought experiment in physics, and that's the Schrödinger cat paradox. So in a nutshell, you have a box that's closed, and inside the box is a cat with a bottle of cyanide with a hammer suspended above it. And a random event is going to make the hammer drop or not. Let's just pretend the random event is I'm going to shake the box, and it's either going to drop or it's not. And if it drops, it kills the cat. But we don't know what happened until we look inside the box. So until the lid comes off the box and consciousness arrives on the scene to witness, the cat lives in both a living dead state. It's a potential to be one of those two states, but it's not there yet until consciousness arrives on the scene. Pretty much what the scientists were saying in the news conference is reality depends on consciousness to be there to witness something, or reality exists in a twilight zone state of something or not something yet. Living dead cat. So there's a scientist here in San Diego, Fred Alan Wolf, who rectified that and said the next moment from now is the cat in the box. That the next moment from now we're going to look inside this box of the next moment. Inside is not going to be a cat. It's going to be potential of all things that could possibly be. Why I'm choosing the next moment of me talking and you listening is always because I have an expectation that I live in a body and that you're on the other side of your screen listening to me. Why we keep buying into that is because it seems so real. And I have memories, I have evidence, I have photographs, I have movies, I have things that prove to me that I'm X number of years old and I know different people and I live in a certain place. But in reality, from a quantum standpoint, that's being recreated moment by moment. My expectation creates a path of least resistance that the universe is looking for. Out of an infinite field of all possibilities, my expectation makes one of those special. because I'm expecting it. And the universe looks for that as a path of least resistance to form the next moment. So if you multiply that at a deep unconscious level, where our collective unconscious minds are all linked together in a great mind, and that great mind is taking a vote of consensus by all of our collective unconscious expectations, and the world pops into existence moment by moment and recreates itself based on our collective expectation. So if we could link all of our expectations together and manage the expectations, we could manage the next moment from now and make it whatever we want it to be. Attempts have been done to do that, which is what the idea of Lindisfarne, the monastery off the coast of England, with the Christian monks trying to change the course of the Dark Ages, and in the 60s, trying it with William Irwin Thompson and a group of people in the 60s to change where the 60s was going, the Vietnam War and civil rights and women's rights and holistic food and to save the planet. And here we are again doing the same thing. My supposition is that it's never been possible before. Our present level of technology allows us to view the brain, to look at the EEG patterns of where the brain goes in high states of meditation. And over here, we can generate specific types of sound waves, and we can measure with EEG equipment what happens with the brain when we expose you to these brain entrainment patterns that can show us that that actually works. We can entrain your brain waves from one state to another. And so if we look at highly desirable, high-level meditation states, and we look at where our brain is now, and we use entrainment to entrain our brain waves to this pattern, we can create high-tech training wheels for achieving something that used to take 30 years very quickly. In this case, my proposition of Lindisfarne 3 is to use entrainment to entrain people's brainwaves to the kinds of states that can link all of our minds together at a subconscious realm. And then it's our job to try to figure out, what do we want this world to look like? And that's always the key question. The Kahunas in Hawaii had it down in what is called Huna. The Kahuna is the shamanic holy person in Hawaii. Their idea is that God grants all prayers, and therefore my present experience is what I've prayed for in the past. And the past prayer happens before a thought. So God grants all prayers, my present experience of what I prayed for in the past, and prayer happens before a thought means that it's not this part, not the thinking linear part, it's the under the hood part of big mind and my expectations that form the next moment. So it throws it back on me again. What is my expectation? It's like God says you can have anything you want. You just have to ask for it very specifically without words before a thought. So now there's two things. How do I get to this place before a thought where I can manage my expectations? And that's the essential question of what meditation has been all about in every culture on earth. How do I meditate? How do I get to this place? How do I get closer to the present moment where I can manage my expectation and make it shift to the next moment from now? And how can I do that collectively with large groups of people? Of course, now that we have the internet, we can do that. And that's kind of where I'm going with this. And here we have the universe putting us all in little houses, looking at our computer screens and practicing social distancing so that the only way to connect is with our consciousness now, electronically. So in the Kahuna realm, they're admonishing that you have to spend a certain amount of time to get into the proper state in order to do the, quote, Kahuna prayer, which is, God says, well, what do you want? You have to ask for it. And most of us don't think in those terms. We think in terms of I don't want to be poor anymore. Well, that's not the way to really define this, because there's that pesky word poor that now gets loaded into your prayer and gets manifest by God. It's more of, what would it look like if I was, what would it feel like in my heart? What would it feel like inside of me as an experience if I was extremely wealthy and money was not an object in my life? It would give me the power to do, to be, to have, to buy, to travel. But after I travel every place and I've bought all the things I want to buy, sooner or later I'm back in my mansion. And now what? Sooner or later, you've had the things and you've bought the things and you've been everywhere. And you still have to come back to yourself to find out, what is it that I want as an experience? If it's love, then it's not defining exactly what this person has to look like, or what their hair color has to be, or what their job description has to be, or their eye color has to be. It's more of, what is this person going to make me feel like when I'm feeling love? And if that becomes my prayer, then that's easier to satisfy than a long list of details that God is going to look at and say, oh, it's going to take a couple of lifetimes to do this one. But if it's just, I need to be feeling this way with this person, then it can be faster. It's defining it better. So when we start to think about what kind of world do we want, if we had the tools to link ourselves together to redefine what the next moment in the world is going to be. I think this is what the spontaneous remission is all about. You get the cancer death sentence, and the fear of that is powerful enough to crack open the jail cell so that your spirit can be free and realize that it has a choice, that I can step into another outcome of the next moment where I don't have cancer, and all of a sudden, bang, there's no cancer. So when we align all of this with the 100th monkey idea, where a critical number of monkeys know how to wash their potatoes, and then all the monkeys on all the islands can instantly know how to wash their potatoes, that's what I'm talking about. One small group of high level of consciousness aligned perfectly together can tip the balance of the next moment. So the track that I'm going to use today to do this process is based on a brainwave frequency called Epsilon. Back in 1988, when I sold my practice and sold my house in Virginia and moved to California to do the sound work full-time, I put together a big center, and I got a company in Holland who sent me the first portable EEG device. This was the first EEG device that you could plug into a regular computer and not have to spend $30,000 or $40,000 on a special EEG computer and equipment. This could plug right into your home system. And the first thing I did with that was hook up every single patient for 2 years to prove to myself that this brain entrainment phenomenon actually worked, that I could create a sound that's pulsing at a brainwave speed and have that change your brainwave function to match the speed of this external pulse. And if I did it through headphones with binaural beats slightly out of tune that create the pulse, that it would force the right-left hemispheres to synchronize. And we know that this synchronization process is involved with all the good stuff, good experiences, the ecstatic states, personal epiphanies, spiritual revelations. Also, people experienced out-of-the-body experiences and precognitive experiences, kind of psychic activity. But certainly the idea of the moment a problem gets solved or a new original idea drops in my brain, this synchronicity thing happens for a second, it comes apart. But when we've got headphones on and we've got binaural beat soundtrack going, and the entrainment in this case is Epsilon, it's forcing the brain into this synchronicity state, and that's floating there in synchronized state. in Epsilon. So I think that's a good place to go to try to find the vision of what it is I want, what it is we could conceive of as a before a thought, in the moment expectation of what the world could look like if it was perfect for all of us. So the first order of business is to flesh that out for yourself, to think, to spend some time. What is it? What would the world look like if it was just right? So that's our admonition, is first of all to use science and technology to bring our brains together in a synchronized state, entrained together and synchronized in Epsilon, so that we can collectively find and redefine what it is we want. Because that becomes the expectation that we can manage for the next moment. I remember how astounded I was when I hooked all these patients up to watch this entrainment was happening, and I saw, because I was in training in the first sessions to deepest delta, because that's where physical recuperation takes place. And I saw the EEG signal dropping below the lowest range of delta. And when I went to school, we learned that it was beta, alpha, theta, delta. And I'm seeing below delta on my EEG screen. And I'm not understanding what I'm seeing, but every person who got up after that session who exhibited this below delta brain activity had an extraordinary tale to tell of going out of their body and flying home and finding their keys, or knowing what's going to happen and then having it happen, or having a really big time spiritual revelation, or a brand new idea that formed something they had to go off and do. And after I saw this quite a number of times and started researching, has anybody else seen below delta brain activity, and seeing nobody's reporting that, I named it myself. So I named it Epsilon, the next Greek letter down from delta. Later, with working with EEG specialists, I did 2 years of clinical practice with neurofeedback. So I got some really sophisticated brain mapping computers that I could use. We did that for 2 years. That's when I realized, talking to this person, this EEG person, that they wouldn't have been able to see an epsilon brain frequency anyway, because their expensive EEG equipment doesn't show below 1 hertz. So that showed me a lot about humanity, that if you don't believe there's anything below 0.5 hertz, then you make your equipment that doesn't even show it. So you couldn't discover it even if it was there. And because I was using a new piece of EEG equipment sent to me from Holland that didn't have those kind of limits, then I was able to stumble on something that nobody else could see because their equipment wasn't showing it. So this soundtrack, this Epsilon soundtrack that we're going to listen to, lasts for 5 minutes. So here's what we're going to do, or what I'd like everyone to focus on, is the Kahuna idea before a thought. Managing my wish, managing my expectation. What is it that we all want? And there are certain things that we have in common that we want. We want safety, security for ourselves and the ones we love, our family, our friends, our community, our world. We're all in this together. We want the world to function a certain way. We want people first and life first above profits, things like that. So with that, let's get yourself some headphones. And it's best with headphones on. And we're going to begin. Getting my headphones. close your eyes and let's focus on what it is we'd like to see the world be. Peace. Blessings. Until next time, next Sunday.